BUS508 Tips and Tricks for Succeeding. My name is Steph Bennett. I'm a Learning Development Tutor in the Hub. Today's aims: to develop an understanding of critical reflection in preparation for an upcoming portfolio. We will look at breaking down the brief, reflection, and a critical reflection task. Breaking down the brief. Grab your assignment brief. So this time around, your assignment type is a portfolio, which is kind of like an assignment made up of mini assignments. And this will include an action plan, a critical reflection, and a critical evaluation. The weighting is 100%, so there's only one assignment for this module. Check your submission date. The word count 2,500 plus or minus 10%. The big picture topic is management in practice. The angle that you're looking at that big picture topic from is your role, your organisation, the KSBs, and the lens of theory. And your assignment brief is instructing you to identify, to critically reflect, critically evaluate, and demonstrate. But what do those instruction words and phrases mean? Well, let's have a look. Here are the module outcomes, and you can see the instruction words in there. Identify is the ability to pinpoint something due to prior understanding or experiences. Critically evaluate features twice in outcome 2 and 3, and this means to assess the value of a position, idea, or piece of evidence, considering the strengths and weaknesses to reach a conclusion. Demonstrate is about showing how with examples to illustrate. And finally, critical reflection is about thinking analytically about experiences, actions, values, and beliefs from an objective standpoint, weighing up the strengths and limitations and considering the viewpoints of literature to develop an understanding. Make sure you check your module outcomes. They are the expectations of your assessor. You can use them as a little mini checklist to ensure that you've covered everything that you need to cover. And here is the marking rubric. This is how well you have met the module outcomes. But what does it mean? The far right hand column, this is to do with spelling, punctuation, grammar, syntax, the flow of your sentences, and using APA 7th correctly. The next column on, this is to do with how well you have accessed the reading list. Have you conducted wider reading? Have you used the CRAP test to analyse your sources to select the most viable and suitable sources? The next column is to do with using a peel structure to effectively demonstrate independent thinking. For example, what does your literature suggest? Why is that evidence significant? What are the strengths and limitations of the evidence? If there are limitations presented to approaches, are there resolutions presented by the literature as well? And finally, the last column. This is to do with subject specialism. How does practice align with or deviate from theory? Why? And why is that important? Reflective practice. What is it? Reflection is an internal process, and you might find yourself doing it quite a bit. But your tutor may ask you to formalise reflection through a written assignment. Reflection is metacognition, which is about acting, reacting, adapting. And why is it important? Well, it helps us to see things that are invisible to us, to identify things in our practice we might not have done beforehand. It helps us to see things from a different perspective, to consider our practice from different perspectives. Hopefully it can help us stop making or repeating mistakes. So then we can go about spotting and rectifying those mistakes in our practice. And it's about creating that little toolkit of what works and what doesn't, what practices work effectively in our workplace. There are plenty of reflective frameworks. These are kind of like step-by-step guides to reflecting wholly and thoroughly. There's Kolb's experiential learning cycle, Gibbs' reflective cycle, Brookfield's lenses, Schoen's reflection in and on action, Borton's what, so what, and now what, and even Moon. and let's take a look at Moon. So Moon suggests there are 4 levels of reflection. Descriptive reflection, where the writing describes but doesn't reflect. Descriptive with some reflection, where the writing describes but indicates some points for reflection. Reflective writing, some description, focused on points for reflection, some self-questioning, some self-analysis. But it's critical reflection that we're looking for at this level. This account shows the author has stood back from the event, the author has questioned themselves and considered other views and motivations. It also considers what has been learned through the process. So you're aiming for critical reflection in your work. Let's do a little task then. Using Moon's 2014 levels of reflection, can you order the following examples from descriptive to critically reflective? You can pause the video on each of the examples. Example 1, pause the video. Example 2, pause the video. Example 3, pause the video. And example 4, pause the video. And here are the answers. Sample 1 was descriptive. Sample 2 was the critically reflective. This is the one we're aiming for. Sample 3 was descriptive with some reflection. And sample 4 was reflective. Potential draft for the assignment. Part 1 is your action plan. So this could be written as a short essay as per the example below. Or it could even be placed in a table depending on your tutor's preferences. I've gone with the essay approach. Introduction to the action plan, 100 words maximum. State the focus and purpose of the action plan, for example, to address gaps identified in the analysis. Provide some background, for example, state why addressing gaps is important in professional practice and maybe draw on literature to support this. And finally, provide a map. Accordingly, this action plan will begin by exploring, subsequently it will discuss. Then move into the main body of the action plan, which is approximately 800 words. Identify your gap, link to the KSBs, state why it matters and underpin with the literature. State your objective and what you want to achieve. State what logical steps you will take to address the gap and how, and use the literature to underpin this. This will include your stretch and challenge activities. Think about the resources that will support this journey, the tools, the support, the learning opportunities. Think about the time frame and the measurement. How will you know it's been achieved? It's almost a little bit like a SMART target. And finally, conclusion to the action plan, 100 words. Revisit what you set out to do and why, and emphasise the importance of action plans in professional practice. And finally, reiterate the significance of closing the gap in your role. Part 2, critical reflection. Introduction to the critical reflection, approximately 50 words. State the focus and purpose. State the background, for example, explain the significance of the evidence in the portfolio in preparation for the endpoint assessment. And finally, provide a map. Main body of the critical reflection, 400 words. You're kind of taking on a little bit of a reflective framework here. What evidence have you included so far? Think about work-based examples and feedback. Does your evidence align with the KSBs, and if so, how? Is the evidence and progress consistent? Strengths of your evidence and examples and why? Challenges you've met along the way and how you overcame them. Think about to what extent you feel prepared and confident to present this evidence and why you feel this way. And are there any remaining actions you need to take to improve your readiness, and if so, what are they and how will this be undertaken beforehand? And finally, the conclusion of the reflection. Revisit what your critical reflection set out to do and why. Summarise your confidence in your evidence and your continual professional development to tackle any gaps before the endpoint assessment. And finally, conclude by suggesting how this reflection has helped you to better prepare for the endpoint assessment. And part 3, critical evaluation. Introduction to the reflective critical evaluation, maybe 100 words maximum. Again, focus and purpose, which is a critical reflection of your impact on others and your organisation. Provide some background information, brief contextual information on the themes you'll reflect on. Draw on the literature for definitions if you need to. And say why reflection is crucial to developing professional practice. Again, refer to the literature on this. Provide a map. For example, this reflection will begin by critically evaluating, etc. Main body of the reflective critical evaluation, approximately 800 words. Choose your themes. Will it be leadership, communication, motivation? Discuss each of them separately. Cover the what and the how. Describe a work-based experience. Cover the why and the so what. What was your effect on others? What was your effect on the workplace in terms of the outcome? Then think about how these experiences, actions, reactions and impacts align with the literature. Draw on it to support your behaviour and choices. Highlight the strengths of your approaches, use the literature. Highlight the limitations and areas for improvement and use literature again based on your approaches. Explore how and why you personally impact and contribute to the workplace culture and draw on literature. Explore how your actions influence and are influenced by the workplace. Work-based examples will be relevant here, as will underpinning with the literature. And finally, conclusion to the reflective critical evaluation. Revisit what you set out to do and why. Summarise your key findings and reiterate their significance. And finally, re-emphasise your next steps. What are your future actions to continually improve practice? And finally, your references and your KSBs. Don't forget, if you're going to explicitly say that you're drawing on a reflective cycle, don't forget to cite and reference that author. If there are any questions, although I can't answer them online, you can drop me an email at stephanie.bennett@lincolnbishop.ac.uk. And finally, moving forward, the Learning Development Blackboard has tips and tricks for academic reading and also for reflection on there. Scribber can support you with academic writing, and you can also book in a one-to-one with learning development for things like spelling, punctuation, grammar and referencing. And here is my email address again if you need it. Thanks for being with me today.